So apparently I talk very low, so I'm not shouting at you, I'm just wanting you to hear me. Housekeeping, restrooms are in the back by the exit. Once you walk through, it'll be on your left. What else? We have Robin at the bar. She's doing a wonderful job. If you want something to drink or eat, she's there for us. I know there's some elected officials today, so if you wanted to stand up and just say hello, go ahead. Anybody?
Sits up!
Brian Parker, I'm the Register of Wills.
Anybody else want to say hello?
Shannon? You don't recognize the uniform on Jim Carter.
So I know that there are a lot of candidates in the room, but for time's sake, we're just going to get right into it. We are going to start with the pledge. Asia.
Will everyone please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
We are America.
That booming voice back there, would you like to say a prayer for us?
Sure. But first, sorry. The Apostle Paul, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, and do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. If you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed. Do not lose sight of this season. We fight for very important things. Amen? Amen. Heavenly Father, Lord, I just lift up this gathering. I lift up these candidates, that they go forth, that you reveal their character, that you reveal the one that will be the one that leads us back to your will, to your prosperity, to a nation that is based on freedom and standards. Standards that have withstood time and are inalienable because they come from you. We lift them up in the name of Jesus and through the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, so tonight we have all the candidates for Anne Arundel County Executive. We also have the very kind Tori Snow, who decided to come here, was a former vice president of 32. Yeah, that's right. And he's also in WBAL. So he's going to help moderate here. We're going to start with introductions. You're going to get 3 minutes to introduce yourselves, and then we're going to go into some questions, and then we're going to open it to the floor. So, all right, let's go.
I'm going to I'll set the clock, I'll say go, and then I'll let you know in 30 seconds and it's left.
Me too.
Who's going first?
Like that.
Somebody like to go first?
Look, ladies first.
How about you, sir? You're the newbie. Come on.
I am the newbie. I'll go first. Can everybody hear me? I mean, I got a big booming voice. That's okay. Hi, folks. Yeah. My name is Chris John, and like the rest of these folks here, I am running for county executive. I am not a politician. I've never ran for political office in my life, so kind of learning a lot of things as I go as far as kind of how things work. Like I didn't realize I could bring stuff in tonight. I am a local resident here in Glen Burnie. I live right over by the hospital, just a few short minutes away. Been here with my lovely wife for the last 13 plus years. Father of two great young boys. Not young anymore, my God. They're my oldest is a quarter century, so yeah, I'm kind of making me old. I work here in Anne Arundel County as well. I've been in management for about 28 years of my working life. The last 4 years, I've been working as a corporate level recruiter. For the last 15 years, I've been working for the local Valvoline Instant Oil Change franchise. So whenever you get your oil change to Valvoline, I probably had something to do with some of the staff that works there. But I deal with corporate level recruiting now, so I deal with recruiting higher level positions, accountants, HR personnel, things like that. However, I did spend, as I said, 28 years in management, a lot of years as an area manager for Valvoline, overseeing up to 12 different locations, 12 different personalities. One of my core beliefs in business, as well as I believe it will transpose very well to this position, is I believe in training and developing people and helping people to grow and develop within the business. I see that very translating very well into this kind of an arena. If you're running a department, who's your number two? If you get hit by a bus tomorrow, you got somebody that can step into your position and fill it. That's the kind of people that I see working in and around Anne Arundel County. People that want to grow, want to develop, and want to stay working, for us. We're going to get into some questions tonight. We'll get into a lot of different positions, I'm sure. Businesses, working with our local businesses is very important to me. Education, transparency, very important. Law enforcement. 30 seconds. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Good evening, all. I'm Jessica Hare. I am privileged to currently represent you on the County Council in District 7, which is Crofton, Riva, Davidsonville, Edgewater, Mayo, and South County. I live in Edgewater with my husband and our 4 children. By way of background, I'll give you a little bit of an abbreviated version. I am a civil engineer and also an attorney. And I was born on a military base, so I take all of that with me in my work currently on the council and in my future work in the county executive's office. Engineering is problem solving, right, at its core. You take a set of constraints, you take an issue, and you work within those boundaries. You use the resources you have to come up with a common sense, innovative, efficient solution. That's how I've approached the last 4 years. Every single piece of legislation I've passed, and I've passed more legislation on the county council than any other current member of the county council. I've done that from the minority. All of it has been to lower taxes and fees on our hardworking families, eliminate unnecessary regulatory hurdles, and promote quality infrastructure, right? Currently, as an attorney, I work with our nation's contractors who build our country's infrastructure, typically overseas, military barracks, embassies, things like that. I hold the federal government accountable and make sure that those projects get built correctly, on time, within budget, things like that. Let's talk about our current county executive for just a second, even though this is my introduction. In the last 3 years, while I've been focused on all of those things, what have we gotten from the current administration, right? $300 million of increased budget, not even including the budget he's got right now. And all we have to show for it are increased taxes, forced shutdowns of businesses, and free crack pipes in Annapolis, right? What did we get? Is our community safer, right? Does your trash get picked up on time? No, right? Do you get a better response time from the current county? We don't, right? Your income tax went up, your property tax went up, around the property tax cap, okay? Our police chief was in front of us a couple of weeks ago and said that police recruitment is at an all-time low, right? At the same time that resignations and retirement are at an all-time high. So together, we can change that, right? We take the engineering, we take the law, we take our dedication together, we improve parental involvement in our public education, right? We give parents control of our public education. We support our officers in everything that they do so that they have the ability to make our streets safer, right? We support our small businesses because they go out every single day and they support us in the community. So I ask for your vote. I thank you very much for your time tonight. I'm excited to talk more about any questions that you might have on your mind, any specific pieces of legislation that you might want to discuss. And I'm very grateful that you're all here. Huge thank you to the District 32 Club for hosting us this evening. Thanks, guys.
Good evening. How is everybody tonight? Good? All right. I'm Herb McMillan, and I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the oldest of 7 children. I had 5 sisters, and we had 1 bathroom. So When I got a scholarship to the Naval Academy, I thought that I had died and gone to heaven when I found out that my room was going to have only one roommate and my own bath. It was great. So, went to the Naval Academy. I graduated with honors. After I graduated, I was served on a destroyer for a year and then went to flight school. After I qualified as a Navy pilot, I flew classified missions for the Navy and I was awarded the Navy Commendation Medal. I left active duty after the Gulf War, stayed in the Navy Reserves and retired as a commander. Along the way, I married my Naval Academy sweetheart, Kathy. We had 4 children. And after I left the Navy, I became active in the community. I was a PTA president, Homeowners Association board member, youth football coach, and a tutor at a middle school. I decided to run for the Annapolis City Council. I ran in a majority Democrat, majority black district. And I ran against a black police officer who was also a minister. It was a tall order. But I won the election, and more importantly, I became friends with George Kelly, my opponent, and George ended up being a Republican, so I considered that to be a win in every respect for all of us. While I was on the city council, I passed legislation that required that you show ID before you vote, and I was able to cut property taxes twice. When I finished my term as a councilman, I ran for the state as a state delegate. I beat an incumbent Democrat. The second time I ran for delegate, I beat an incumbent Democrat woman. And my final time when I ran for delegate, Mike Bush gerrymandered my district. He was in it, and I ended up getting more votes than he did in the election. I mention this because I think it's important that we have a nominee who can win in a majority Democrat area. And I've proven repeatedly that I can do that. And Anne Arundel County has more Democrats now than Republicans. Passed more legislation in the state legislature than any other member of the Anne Arundel County delegation. And I think that's important too. It shows I can work with people and get things done. While I was in the legislature, I voted against coddling illegal immigrants, had an A rating from the NRA, and voted to increase funding for the police and education while with no tax increases. I think that's the kind of thing you're going to need in a county executive. I think proven experience is important, and I look forward to talking with you all more as the evening progresses. Thank you.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak to all of you, tell you about myself and about my platform. My name is Fernando Vera III. I am a father, a husband, and a devout Catholic. I have 4 children, 16, 13, 12, and 9. They require a lot of things. But the most they require is a very good education, for which we're not getting in the Arundel County. Okay. I've been married for 14 years to a wonderful woman. She's a friend more than anything else. And I started with a devout Catholic. I don't really have to tell you anything about that, right? Professionally speaking, I'm an engineer. I have a bachelor's degree in engineering, electrical engineering. My specialty are photonics, electromagnetics, lasers, radar systems. I have a master's degree in electrical engineering as well for systems engineering. For the last 27 years, I have worked in multiple U.S. government agencies, solving problems. The mission, together with my peers, is to make sure that our military has the best weapon systems. It is the best military in the world, to ensure that our brothers and sisters can come home safe and sound to their families. After I finished my bachelor's degree, I joined the Navy. I went to OCS down in Pensacola, Florida, where my Bill went to API training. But I continue to serve my country. I continue serving my country in helping all the different solving problems. As Mrs. Garrett said, engineering is about solving problems. Not only technical problems, but programmatic problems as well. People tell me, you don't have the experience to run for office. I'm sorry, I have 27 years of dealing with military, 3-star generals, and other people. And it's about ending and talking to the end user and making sure that the needs and wants are met which are not met right now in the county. I encourage you to visit my website, friendsoftheusconstitution.com. The reason I'm running for county executive is because I'm tired of the overtaxation, the abuse of power, and the abuse of authority. They do it in the name of profit. Okay. And you can go and you can ask me questions as you go, and you will, about the different stands about how they violate the Constitution. I think it's time enough to say enough is enough. I need somebody who's going to be fierce and forceful to say somebody enough is enough. We're not going to do that. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I want to thank everybody for coming out and humbly thank everybody for listening to all of us up here, because that's got to be pretty much a pain to begin with. My name's John Grasso. I'm a homegrown right here. I'm 60 years old. I started my job down here at Fontainebleau, Rocco's Pizza, like most Italians do. Okay? And at the point of 25 years old, I got to a point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Anybody ever been there before? Well, that's pretty much me. And I decided to run for the county executive race back in 1986, 25 years old, ignorance on fire, and just banged on everybody's door. Okay? Until I realized that Anne Arundel County went beyond Arundel. Okay? I didn't have an idea. And so what happened was, as that race played out, I lost by 19 votes, 25 years old on $3,500. Fast forward, worked at Fontainebleau, became a chef, got into a real estate business. I've owned and operated my own business for 36 years, okay? And then at that point, someone came to me back there, said to me, why don't you run for this county council spot? And I said, well, why don't I go for county executive? He goes, well, try the county council and see if you really like it. And I've got to tell you, folks, it was the most humbling thing that I could ever ask for. If you're in politics for the real reason, it's the best. And so what I did is to prove to people that I wasn't trying to enrich my pockets like some of the others, okay? I said to everybody, I'll fund my own campaign. I'll borrow $50,000 on a charge card, fund my own campaign, and I'll do the job for free. So I gave back over $100,000 of my councilman's salary, okay, back to the people. Nobody up here is willing to give back to county executive race, and I'm making it clear to everybody here that I'm going to donate most of the salary should I be the nominee and should I win. That tells you right there who has whose pocket if I'm not going to benefit from your money whatsoever. It's very clear. And you need to look very closely at the campaign contributions on who's getting what money, because that tells you whose back they got. You're not going to worry about that with me, because it's my money, okay? And I'm running a string budget. It's not that I can't get the campaigns, I don't want to be bought, okay? So as a councilman, I turned around and I did a whole bunch of legislation and passed. That's something that you folks are going to look at tonight, okay? And you're going to find out there's a lot of air being moved up here. And there's the ones that are going to say, I'm going to do, okay? And there's the ones that actually did it. So some of the legislation that I might have talked about is that one of my first door knocks was a woman, and she invited me to her house. She started crying. I didn't understand why she was crying, but her husband just passed away. His name was John, just like me. And soon to found out she was worried about losing her home to property taxes. The first piece of legislation, freezing property taxes on senior citizens. That was the first piece. Then I went into your county government and found all kinds of theft in our recycling. Then I found out that we were paying retirement 8 years in Anne Arundel County for retirement, and I took it up to 10 years. There's a bunch of legislation that I passed, and I invite everybody to check my website out, and you will see it firsthand. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys so much for your introductions. And before we get into it, we'll lay down a couple of the base rules. First of all, I know that we have a big room here. There's air conditioning running, and I've already gotten several text messages. If you could kindly use the microphone, for the people that way everybody can hear. I just got a few text messages. Some people couldn't hear over the air and things like that. So we'll ask you to use the microphone. I'll also offer this admonition, I suppose, encouragement, if you will. My teachers in college, I went to school to train to be a pastor, and we used to do something called the effective speaker principles. And one of the effective speaker principles that stuck out, there were 10 of them, but the one that always sticks out to me today, and I use it in any condition, any setting that I'm speaking in, the effective speaker principle says that the effective speaker is a person whose character, knowledge, and judgment command respect. That's something that whenever I do any forum, whenever I'm on the air. These are all things that I'm thinking about. And the reason that I mention that is that we're going to have an opportunity to hear from everyone. And there's a lot of strategies, there's a lot of ways that we can do this. My encouragement to all of the candidates as you present your message is to keep that in mind, right? It's not just your message is being scrutinized, but your knowledge is being scrutinized. Your judgment is being scrutinized. Your character is being scrutinized. And so with that in mind, we'll lay out some of the fundamental rules or guidelines. There are 3 questions that have been prepared from the District 32 Republican Club, and I will read them. They're carefully worded with the intent for you to understand, digest, and respond accordingly. All 5 candidates will have an opportunity to respond to all 3 questions. Responses should be limited to 2 minutes. We will have a timekeeper to enforce this, and this is, I understand the temptation is to say a lot. Our pastor teachers used to tell us when we were training for ministry, blessed is the man that can get airborne with a small runway. So I'll keep that in mind as we go through these questions. We will go through the 3 different questions, and then we'll have a time for the audience participation, and then we'll go through that at that point in time. So we'll start with the first question. I have a randomly selected order here. So starting off with Mr. Herb McMillan, I'll read the question. If you'd like the question repeated when it is your turn, I'm happy to do so. But here's the question as presented from the District 32 Republican Club. As you may know, the Anne Arundel County Fire Department is a combination fire department with paid firefighters and volunteer firefighters. The county's relationship is not the same with the career firefighters as it is with the volunteers. As county executive, would you be open and willing to do collective bargaining with the Anne Arundel County volunteer firefighters? We'll start with you, Mr. McMillan.
You know, I'm an airline captain for American, and you talked about how you could appreciate getting airborne on a short runway. I was also a Navy pilot. Try landing on one. It takes a little bit of doing. We have about 500 volunteer firefighters in the county, and they contribute a lot to us. Now, I'm a union member, as was Ronald Reagan, but I'm not aware that the volunteer fire departments have a union per se. I do think that we should make better use of our volunteer firemen. I think that they contribute a lot, and they can contribute a lot more. And I think they could also relieve a lot of the strain on our budget if we employ them better and use more of them. So I'm certainly open to that. I believe that it's a good idea to look for ways to save money and at the same time reward people who are giving back to their community. And the volunteer fire department members do that. So I'd be glad to have a conversation with them about it. I'll be glad to take that under consideration and look at it, because I think it's a good idea. It could, number 1, save us money, and then number 2, be good for us all together, because we could bring in more people to be firefighters at less cost.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Let's check in with you, Mr. Fernando Vera III.
The simple answer is, can you hear me? The simple answer is yes. I will be supporting any collective bargaining, but I will go a little further than that. Okay? I believe people that put their lives in danger for our safety, like police officers and firefighters, and now EMS, with all the fentanyl going on, I think they deserve a hazardous state. Okay? Because they are doing something good for us. Now, if I'm elected county executive, I will be doing my best to cut down any repetitive or redundant jobs that we have in the county. I am for small government. Okay? We can be effective with a small government. In engineering, we utilize something called CMMI and Six Sigma. I mean, you use a lot more in manufacturing. Okay? In trying to make things work far better. In trying to make the government better and smaller, we can save a lot more money. And that money can be applied to the fire department, the police department, and DMS.
Thank you. Let's hear from Mr. Grasso.
The interesting part about it is that in a lot of debates, people
elected people that are running for the position are always going to say yes to everything because they want that vote. Okay, we all know that. The honest person will turn around and say, "Let me see," because they're not in front of the budget. In fact, I'm the only one up here that's been in front of that budget 8 years. And to sit there and try to tell you I'm going to make promises is not a genuine thing that you should be doing. Right now, would I be open to it? Absolutely. Okay. Right now, the volunteers, if I'm not mistaken, once they get 20 years in, they get a small retirement. Okay, the issue is maybe we should give them a bigger retirement than what it is. So we actually have to look at the budget, see where the money's at, and see what cost-saving methods that we can do, find the theft, give incentive programs to our employees to help us find where we can save some money, and then we can move forward. Once we got the money, then we can turn around and try to help our volunteers out and have a better situation so we can move forward in the animal account. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John Grasso. Let's hear from Ms. Jessica Hare.
Thank you very much. So for me, whenever there's a solution proposed, right, I first try to understand the problem that we're addressing, right? So the question is, would I be open to a collective bargaining? I'm open certainly to talking about it or considering it. I'd like to know what is the problem we're trying to address, right? I've spoken to a number of volunteer firefighter groups, and what I hear from them every day is they don't feel like they have a voice. If that's the problem we're trying to correct, maybe there's other things we can be doing as well, right? Either in addition to or as a substitute for any kind of collective bargaining, right? They need to have a seat at the table. Every single group that I speak to of the volunteers, that's their number one complaint. We don't have a seat at the table. We can't talk directly to the county executive. We have to go through the fire chief, right? Even if we go through the fire chief, our message doesn't get delivered. So I would love to know more specifically about what the issues are. Is it the administrative requirements that they have to adhere to? Because I'm hearing that those are more burdensome. Is it the fact that currently they are all being made to take EMT training? They're not allowed to ride on a piece of apparatus if they are not also taking that EMT training. And I've heard from a number of folks that that's a problem for them. Some of them, they want to do the firefighting side, they don't want to be an EMT. So I would really love to know a little bit more about the problem we're trying to solve. But yes, I'm always open to any kind of discussion on that front.
Thank you, Ms. Jessica Hare. Let's hear from Mr. Chris John.
Well, I do have to agree with just about everything everybody said. Yes, I am absolutely willing, and I want to sit down with our volunteers. Like Herb said, I don't think we're utilizing our volunteers quite enough. I was speaking at an event about 2 months ago at a fire hall, and I was talking to some of the firefighters there, and they have some concerns. And as I said in my opening, I'm not a politician, and I'm learning a lot of things as I go. One of the things that I learned was I gave this individual my information. Give me a call. I really want to sit down with you. I never got that phone call. Instead of Mike getting his information and reaching out to him. We do need to work with our volunteers. I'm very interested in sitting down and talking with our volunteer firefighters to find out what their concerns are. I know that some of their concerns are they're not in the right positions. They feel like they should be at different levels within the fire department, and because it's a volunteer position, not a paid position, they're not able to have the rank that they deserve. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed. But yeah, I definitely want to hear what they have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chris John. Thank you all for your responses. That's the first question. Our next question is going to center on the issue of crime. If elected county executive, how will you work with the different police departments, the state's attorney's office, other jurisdictions, including state, local, and federal agencies, including ICE, to address the issue of crime? Let's start with Ms. Jessica Hare.
Thank you. So we'll try and go through each of these. The first thing we'll talk about is the 287G program, which if anyone is familiar with that program, it's a program whereby the county works with the federal government so that if a criminal is arrested for a violent crime, brought in and identified as being here illegally, ICE can come and handle any kind of deportation proceedings, take them before a magistrate, etc. That program was in place under County Executive Shue. It actually also generated revenue because the county rented out beds to ICE in the detention center. So we could generate as much as $4 million a year off that program. It was a really effective program. That program was terminated on day one of County Executive Pittman's term, and actually Councilman Volke was the lead sponsor on a resolution to bring that program back. Councilwoman Fiedler, who's here, and I also supported that resolution. We actually went and did so much research on this into the detention centers, and we discovered, I think it was at least 12 people who had been identified as could have been caught by this program fell through the cracks in the time period between the termination of the program and that resolution. It was maybe a 5-week time period, and 12 people had already fallen through the cracks. So that's number one, that program needs to come back. Separately, I think what would be really helpful is, we need to publish some of the crime statistics. It's very difficult right now for the general public to get regular access to crime statistics in the county. And I think that type of publishing of data and that transparency will be very helpful for all folks in the county. Thank you. I also think that, look, we need to support our officers, right? All of our first responders, but we need to support our officers. They go out every day, they put their lives on the line. I did a ride along with the police in 2019 before COVID, and I was incredibly impressed with their compassion and their dedication to keeping our streets safe, right? We need to support them, not just with money. They need the resources, the financial resources, but they need our support internally, right? Morale is low right now. They've been attacked. We can do better than that.
Thank you, Ms. Jessica Hare. Let's move over to Mr. Chris John.
We don't get to pick and choose what laws we enforce. The laws are there for a reason. All branches of government need to work together. Okay, the legislative branch needs to make common sense laws that work for everybody. The executive branch needs to make sure that the police departments are working together, that the sheriff's department and the police department are connected and are sharing information. I understand that at one point that was a problem. We need to make sure that they have the same information, that they're working together. The judicial branch. We need to make sure that the judicial branch is bringing proper charges and holding people accountable. And let's make sure that we don't put ourselves into a position that Baltimore City seems to be in, where they seem to want to do what they want in that department. We don't get to pick and choose what laws we enforce. As Jessica said, we definitely need to get that relationship back together with ICE. We definitely need to work. Look, God love immigrants. Okay, we're all most likely descendants of some immigrant in one way, shape, or form. But we have laws for a reason, and those laws need to be enforced. And that also comes to immigration. We also need to make sure that we build a bridge between the police departments and the community. Whether you want to hear this or not, folks, there is a disconnect. There are people that do not trust the police. We need to work with the community and the police department to build that trust, because if you want to solve crimes, you need to help with the community. So, I guess that's about all I have to say. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chris John. Let's hear from Mr. Fernando Vera III.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Question is, if elected county executive, how will you work with the different police departments, the state's attorney's office, other jurisdictions, including state, local, and federal agencies, including ICE, to address the issue of crime?
First and foremost, the question is, how would you work with the other agencies? Okay? You need to sit down and make an appointment with each and every one of them to understand how I will be able to help them. Okay? There was a questionnaire going around in Arundel County asking the citizens and residents of Arundel County what was most concerning to them today. Safety and drugs was more concerning to the majority of the people. Okay? Yet Pittman allocated $47 million for safety. And most of it is going to go into upgrading the communication system and doing a station, a fire station. Fire station, thank you. So first and foremost, you need to sit down with every single one of them to understand what are the requirements, how you can help them locally, and trying to enforce some of those laws. Some of those laws are at the federal level, And right now, if you were to arrest somebody and take it to ICE, it's going to be given a ticket and released. We need to address this problem even further by not allowing people who are not documented to work in our county. If they cannot make a living, they're going to leave. Okay? But the question is, are we sitting down with every single one of them to understand what the issues are and how we can help?
Thank you, Mr. Fernando Vera III. Let's move over to Mr. Herb McMillan.
I was present in the audience on the day that Stuart Pittman was inaugurated, and at his inauguration, he did away with the 287G program, and I knew then we were going to be in for a rough ride, a very rough ride. Because why would you do away with a program that pays us to hold on to illegal immigrant felons who are a danger to the community? So, with that step, yes, I will reinstate that program. Because that program, the absence of it, has turned Anne Arundel County into a sanctuary county for illegal immigrant felons. We can't tolerate that. We have more of them coming down from Baltimore. Jessica talked about statistics. It's difficult to get statistics. The FBI keeps them a year and a half to 2 years in arrears so that you have a hard time keeping up with what's going on in real time. But I think all of us recognize that violent crime is on the rise. We see it in the papers every day. And we have to act now to stop it. Last thing, loyalty up and loyalty down. Stuart Pittman criticized a police officer who had a board hearing before the board even gave a conclusion. That's wrong. I'll never do that. I will support our police officers. And quite candidly, I think most people here aren't worried about their relationship with the police. I think most people here recognize that most of our police are good people. And when they occasionally make a mistake, we'll deal with it. But we're not going to throw them under the bus. And we shouldn't have the attitude that they should be thrown under the bus, or that most of them are like that, because they're not. And as your county executive, I'm going to make sure they get the support they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herb McMillan. Let's hear from, please hold your applause, please, for the conclusion of these questions, just to keep things moving. Let's hear from Mr. John Grasso.
Well, you're missing that.
It's kind of interesting because I spoke to the police union, and for most of the people up here, the police union hasn't heard from any of these people in 3 years, okay? I rode with the police for close to a dozen nights. One of the officers said to me, "Don't you have nothing else better to do than ride with us?" I said, "No, I really don't." And I would treat them.
Does that count the arrests?
Yeah, I would, yeah, and I would treat them, okay, to the lunch or dinner, whatever case may be. And where I rode when was up here in North County, it was pretty much like Vietnam up there. So some of the things I did to help the police officers out is that first thing I put through a process to get more tag readers on the cars. And basically what the tag readers do is when cars go by, if there's a warrant, they'll flash yellow screen and the police cars turn around. So I pushed for that. The other thing I turned around and did is that we have a cadet program. It's very important to have this program up and running. It was down. And what the cadet program does is it helps young people that want to be police turn around and see if it's really for them. And it also helps the county from getting sued by checking the monitoring their demeanor. Are they really cop ready? And so we got that up and running. $200,000 to do that. The other issue too is that we have the drugs coming through North County. Okay, we had 4 police dogs up there. I was pushing for 8 police dogs, and the reason behind that is that when the drugs come in and the police pull them over, they need probable cause to search the vehicle. So by having the extra police dogs, we start to catch the drugs that were going inside. They were the things that I did to help fight the crime. Of course, I would do the 287G. Nobody up here is going to tell you that they're not going to do the 287. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John Grasso. If you'd like to, you can give them all a hand. All right, our last pre-selected question before we move on to the audience question centers on affordable housing. If you'd like to start thinking about your questions, you can get the gears turning and then we'll move into that phase. But for each of you, what are your thoughts on this county executive's push for Section 8 and affordable housing in Anne Arundel County, more specifically in downtown Glen Burnie? We'll start with Mr. John Grasso.
I'm completely against it. You can forget that right now. I made a comment in the paper and says, if you can't afford to live in Anne Arundel County, don't live here. I can't afford to live in Malibu, California. That's why I'm not there, okay? And my personal belief is that when you bring this kind of development into Anne Arundel County, you're bringing Baltimore City and the crime with it. I'm not saying people that don't have a lot of money are criminals. I'm not saying that at all. But it's more likely that it's going to cause a problem than it's not. And every time Derek Fink was the councilman back there, we stopped all kinds of low-income housing coming in, and they call it affordable housing, but that's a cheap way of saying we're going to bring problems to Anne Arundel County, and the problems have already started. In fact, in 1986, when I told you I ran for the county executive race, that was part of the problem, because I seen Baltimore City making its way to Anne Arundel County, and I just wasn't going to stand for it. I was going to do something about it. So I am affordable housing? Absolutely not. Let me be clear about that. When I say affordable, we're talking about Section 8. That is not my deal.
Thank you, Mr. John Grasso. Let's move over to Mr. Fernando Vera III.
When I lived in Arundel a few years back, the front end of the community was Section 8. And I served on the board of the association, and every single day we used to get the reports as to the crimes that nobody knew about. So I am against it, simply because it is a burden on everybody who lives in the neighborhood, right? You wouldn't want to be close to that Section 8. The housing value would plummet, right? Nobody would want to go. The school systems would go bad as well. Okay. Truth of the matter is, there's no affordable housing in Anne Arundel County. Unless you've been there for a really long time, houses are going skyrocket, right? And the county right now is trying to make things more difficult by creating more conservation areas, which makes things more difficult for you to sell your property. They tell you that the property is going to increase in value. That's not true. They are not allowing you to do anything to your property. Okay? They say that you're going to get tax breaks from the government. That's not true either. I tried that as well. My property is 100% conservation. I can do nothing with it. I have fought with the state about getting my taxes reduced. We don't. In fact, keep going up and up and up. Okay? So we try to find different ways how to be able to manage both the conservation laws and affordable housing in the county. We want to sit down and make sure that we understand the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fernando Vera III. Let's hear from Mr. Herb McMillan.
I'm more interested in building middle-class housing. Everyone talks about affordable housing, but I need somewhere for my kids to live. Do you guys have children that you want to live here in Anne Arundel County? Do you want them to live with you all their lives? No. We need to have balance. We should let the market work. You know, a lot of people, Stuart Pittman hasn't let very many developments of middle-class homes go forward at all since he's been in office. And so what is the end result? It's the law of supply and demand. It's very simple. If the supply is low and the demand is high, which it is, then the price of a home is going to go up. So a government program to create affordable housing is like a dog chasing its tail. You can keep building more low-income housing, and guess who's going to live there? Low-income people. And where are the middle-class people going to live? They won't have anywhere to live. They'll have to move. I know somebody who sold their home. Mortgage was $2,400 a month. Now they're renting until they can buy another home. And the rent's $2,000. Think about that. It is almost the delta between the difference between the cost of a home and rent now is $400 in some places. Building more low-income housing isn't going to fix that. We need to have a market where we have balance, where we do build some more middle-income homes and allow people to buy them. Because if you don't build them, they're not going to be able to live there, and it's going to jack the price up, and then you'll be talking about, in 4 more years, building more low-income housing. Won't work. We need balance.
Thank you, Mr. Herb McMillan. Let's hear from Ms. Jessica Hare.
Thank you. I just have to point out the hypocrisy of Mr. Pittman while he sits on his 500 acres on Doden Farm in South County, that he then says, let's build affordable housing up in Glen Burnie, right? Let's pack it full with overdevelopment, where we already have problems with overcrowded schools and roads that can't handle the traffic that are on, and the potholes that can't get fixed, and the trash we can't pick up. So that's what I think of his plan. You know, it's also interesting to me when he talks about this affordable housing. He pushed through bills on a party line vote at the council that he labeled as workforce housing. Now I think workforce, I think our county's workforce, right? I think our teachers, our police, our firefighters and things like that. We pointed out during the public hearing that actually 2 teachers that were married to each other, or 2 police officers, or 2 firefighters, or 1 police and 1 firefighter, oh, they make too much money to live in this workforce housing. And we asked about this, and he said, oh, no, don't worry about that. Don't, just look over here, right? Don't listen to that. I mean, it was clear he was pushing it through on a party line vote so that he could jam through development that would overcrowd our schools even further. It's remarkable to me, the kind of, don't worry about me down here, you guys go ahead and do everything up there. I think we would be much better to offer incentives to folks who want to come live in the county and be part of our workforce. Actually was the lead sponsor on a bill to offer to give access to discounts on properties for police, fire, and things like that if landlords or sellers of property wanted to go ahead and give a discount or a preference to veterans, police, fire, teachers, and things like that. And wouldn't you know, that bill failed on a party line vote. That's what I think of his plan.
Thank you, Ms. Jessica Hare. And then finally, let's hear from Mr. Chris John.
Well, I believe that free markets need to prevail. As with everyone else up here, I am against bringing on board what they're calling affordable housing or low-income, Section 8, whatever verbiage you want to use. We would be much better served as a community if we work with people to have them buy homes. Let's work with how can they get loans that they can actually afford to pay. You know, as a homeowner, your monthly payment goes away at some point in time. Good Lord willing, you're going to pay your house off. Home ownership is the way to overcome that. By allowing people, by saying, okay, here's a cheap place for you to live, the people that make money on that are the landlords. The landlords can raise your rent whenever they want. Let's work with people and help them to secure loans that they can actually afford. Let's help people to build their credit rating so that they can get that loan. That way, we can have people coming into our community that can afford to live here, okay, and that are supporting each other. Home ownership is the way to go, not affordable Section 8 housing.
Thank you, Mr. Chris John. Let's give them all a hand. Great job. Now, for this part, we will be doing audience participation. Now, I'm going to, that was the training wheels part of this debate, right? Easy questions. I've got some WBAL heaters in my pocket here, but I think we're just going to open it to the audience, and then you can direct your question to a specific candidate.
Whoa!
Oh, go ahead. You got it? Okay. So any other instructions?
Yes, so I'm going to come out to you, you're going to ask a question, and it's 2 minutes to answer.
All right, so 2 years ago, last month, a handful of citizens stood up against Republican and government tyranny. So I have a 2-part question for each of you, and it's really simple. 1, what is the role of government? And number 2, how will you control public safety, and what are your limits?
Start with Mr. Fernando Vera.
That is a great question. Okay. The Constitution states that the Second Amendment, okay, you have the right to bear arms. Nowhere in the Constitution says that you have that right as long as you have a concealed carry permit or an open carry permit. Okay. I believe that some of the safety issues and concerns that we have can be resolved by allowing people to exercise the Second Amendment right. Okay. They have to, however, have an extensive, comprehensive background check so that if they have a violence history or they have a mental disability or a criminal record, they should not be able to do those. Georgia just passed what is called a constitutional carry. And in their writing, they said, okay, that the state government does not have the right to overshadow your constitutional right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mr. Chris John.
Can you repeat the questions for me, Joseph?
Yep. So we had an unconstitutional tyrant shut down this state. So what is the role of government, and what are you willing to do to constrain or limit public safety?
Well, the role of government, I mean, I guess the elephant in the room would be possibly COVID. The role of government is to educate you, not to tell you what you have to do. So from that perspective, the government should be educating you. Mandates, they gotta go. I think most of us are gonna agree on that. So from a COVID perspective, the rest of it, government's responsibility, we want to have our, roads, we want our first responders taken care of. Their job is public safety. The Second Amendment is fantastic. Absolutely support the Second Amendment. I really wish I could get a permit to carry. You're not going to get that here in this state. But government is best served when it's limited, not when the government is telling you everything you have to do. So I would, instead of, I'm going to do this and that, I'd rather say let's kind of back off and have the government stop telling you what to do. Stop telling you you have to get a shot in your arm if you want to get a paycheck, if you want to work for Anne Arundel County. Less government is better government.
Thank you. Mr. John Grasso.
Well, it was pretty interesting what our governor did. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, government's role is to assist the people. It's just that simple. Okay, we're all adults now. We definitely don't have to tell us how to raise our children, tell us that we have to wear a mask. That's some of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. Okay, but we allowed it happen. And the fact of the matter, Tim Waters, let me give my hat off to him because he was one of the ones that led the charge. And we were all in that parade, and we went down Hogan's place and surrounded his house, and then we went from Frederick County all the way over to Salisbury, and we raised a whole bunch of ruckus over there. That kind of stuff should never happen in the government. What happened this time should never happen. I'm telling you, as the county executive, they would have locked me up for dereliction of duty before I turned around and shut Anne Arundel County down for these mandates. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So that's where I'm at with that point.
Mr. McMillan.
The role of government is to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And as Ronald Reagan put it, it should do all that is necessary, but only what is necessary. Military service, the military, the police, they protect us because that's a job that we can't do against foreign nations ourselves. It's a good example. The interstate system, we can't build our own roads. I think that, with respect to COVID, I'm opposed to the mandates. I'm opposed to the shot mandates, the mask mandates. The shutdowns were wrong, arbitrary and capricious, as one judge put it. The school closures were a travesty. I'm an airline pilot, and I can tell you, it wasn't just Texas and Florida that opened. Maryland was the 48th state to allow children to go back to schools. We were second from the last, and our children lost a year of education because of it. I fought those mandates hard. I wrote about them, I led marches against them, and I was waiting for other people to come forward and do something. And quite candidly, one of the reasons I've decided to run for county executive is because I do believe that Pittman went way too far, and I wasn't impressed with the pushback he was getting from some of our elected officials who happen to be Republicans. So at that point, I made up my mind to run. I believe you are capable of taking care of yourself, and more importantly, in our school system, I believe that parents need to be more empowered. I'm tired of people shoving their political ideologies down the throats of our children. And as a county executive, you can bet we're going to pay attention to what they're talking about in school, because it's our money and they're our children, and we have a right to have a role in that. So yes, government has a place, but its place is beneath us. And I'll never forget that as your county executive. Thank you.
Ms. Hare.
The government that governs the least is the government that governs the best, right? I truly believe in limited government. Mr. McMillan said that Republicans weren't fighting. I was very proud to vote 4 times, I believe, on the council to revoke Mr. Pittman's powers. I was extraordinarily proud after we listened to 6 hours of public testimony on masking to vote against the mask mandate. And it was our 3 Republican votes that prevented a mask mandate from going in place until the health officer, illegally in my mind, went around us and imposed it afterwards, right? An unelected bureaucrat who did that. So for me, I mean, I feel like the last 3, 4, going on 4 years now has been an all-out attack on our families and our businesses. I'm going to tell 2 quick short stories about that. Shortly after the TRO was issued, when the restaurant sued the county for the ridiculousness of shutting them down a second time, New Year's Eve I got a panicked phone call from a restaurant. Don't know how they got my cell phone. I'm awfully glad they did, because a health inspector, 2 weeks after the TRO was issued, right? So the restaurants can be open. A health inspector came into this restaurant and they looked around and they said, I think you're over capacity. And they kicked everybody out. New Year's Eve, right? How awful is this? And they told them, you're gonna have to write all kinds of reports. We're gonna have to work with you for weeks before you can get open again. Immediately I was on the phone with the health department. We had a fire marshal out there. 48 hours we were able to get them reopened. And you know what the crazy part about it is? It turns out they weren't over capacity at all, right? Second story I'm gonna tell you real quick. Our county is currently suing a small business that's been in business for 40 years in District 6. You wanna know why? Because they're growing plants in containers instead of in the ground. That's what your tax dollars are getting spent on right now. This kind of over-regulation from our county government. They're trying to put this little business out of business that's beloved by the community. So all of this to say, I am against the mandates. I've proven record on this, voting against them. I'm proud to have stood up to all of them. And as your county executive, you'll get more of what you got already.
So really fast, the answer is the Founding Fathers said in our Declaration of Independence, the role of government is to protect our God-given rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's the only answer. You guys are all on it, but in the end, that's what you should be looking for.
Yes, I have a question for the executive running. Is this what is your name, sir? Yes.
John Grosso, ma'am.
Yes, are you running to take more lanes from people from Arundel County, because you took our lane from Park West? Are you still Park West owner?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes, you do.
I don't
Yes,
own
you do.
Park West.
You take lanes from people from the communities, and you put it into the Park West, our lane, and you never gave us back our lane.
Ma'am, you have the
So
wrong
I
person.
can't, I hope nobody votes for this man. He's a Park West resident, and he took our lane, and we had the deed on our lane, and he took it with the county council. They signed it and changed our deed. So I hope nobody votes for you. You don't deserve to be there. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
All right. Next.
Hey, may I take this opportunity as the moderator to remind all of our attendees, and I'm sure that a lot of people have a lot of things. We only have, 45 minutes left, and I got kids texting me right now, when you're coming home. So I would really love it if we ask questions. In church we say appropriate, brief, and Christ-centered, but here we would just say, if you have a question, ask your question, make it appropriate and brief so we can get everyone to make a response, if that would be okay.
Hi, my name's Tom Reynolds. Some of you might know me. I own Ritchie Pharmacy up here in Brooklyn Park. 6 years ago, I moved my store out of Brooklyn. Thank goodness they sold the building, because they sold it to a funeral home, because as you know, there's not enough funeral homes in Baltimore to bury everybody and take their bodies. My family makes fun of me because I always wear a Bluetooth. When I go to bed at night, I set my Bluetooth next to my bed, because I'm waiting for the alarm company to say someone has thrown a rock through your window, someone is yanking on your door, they're trying to open your pharmacy. I've been robbed several times just since I've been here in the last 6 years. I've had guns in my place. I've been a pharmacist for 40 years. Shotguns, break-ins, through the roof, through the walls, cinder block walls. As I'm sitting here tonight, I got a reason. A friend of mine who is also an African American, he writes this to me. Black Ford Escape with 2 African American males tried to rob me as I arrived in the parking lot to go to work. When I saw their gun, I took off and called the police. They were late in arriving, about 30 minutes late. Be safe. My understanding that Anne Arundel County is the richest county in the state. I could be wrong about that. And yet our policemen are the lowest paid. Right now, there's a $5,000 bonus set out to hire policemen because who wants to be a policeman under Pittman? I'm going to tell you, I love all of these guys up here, but anybody in this room that will run against Pittman, I'd probably vote for you. You've got to go. We've got to do something about the police. Most of us, a lot of these people are business owners. We've got to do something about the crime in this county. Because like you said, Baltimore City is coming here. It's come here where I am in Brooklyn Park. And it's going to come here to Glen Burnie and the rest of this county. If we don't do something, I want to know what your stand is on police income. And what are we going to do about hiring more cops on the street?
So I think the question is around police, and if you will, I have a question in my mind that I can ask them that I think might go in line with them.
And you can talk about the review board for police too.
So
about ruining their morale.
I will ask each of you, what makes your approach to public safety in Anne Arundel County unique from your rivals? Obviously, we can get the same boilerplate answers, but I'm going to give each of you an opportunity. You have a mess on your hands. Crime is out of control. Baltimore City had a police officer carjacked in broad daylight. Quadruple homicide this afternoon while I was on the air. What is your unique, what makes your plan unique from any of your rivals to make Anne Arundel County safer? We'll start with you, Mr. John Grasso.
Everybody already pretty much heard the actions that I already did with the police dogs, what you call.
Everybody already heard the 4 things that I mentioned to do with the police. So there's really nothing I believe that anyone's going to do a magical wand up here that's going to say something that's going to change the world. My intentions is to go in there is to take the police count up to a minimum of 10 more officers. It's about $110,000 per officer, okay? And that's by the time you put in the police car, the training, and everything else goes on. So you got a budget for around 110. So if I go with 10 more police officers, we're looking at a $1.1 billion increase in the budget. Are we interrupting you there? We are interrupting you there? Amber alert. Okay, everybody got one? Okay.
See how bad crime is?
Yep. So we're going to go in. We're going to increase the budget on the police to begin with. I also spoke about the salaries on the police are also going to have to go up. The problem we're having here is normally we get around 40, 45 people in a police class, and the last one I heard we had 11. Okay, so if you're a police officer, one of the problems that I have also is that if you're doing your job and something goes wrong, you're civilly could possibly be sued for everything that you've got. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And this police monitoring board is something that I am not for the least bit. I'm going to back travel that as fast as I can and away from the police as possible. The police have got to feel that the leadership in the county has got their back. With Pittman, it is definitely not that. So if you're going to fix the problem, you got to increase the salary. Okay, you got to make the police feel that they're wanted. Okay, the second thing you've got to do is you got to increase police strength. I believe we're supposed to be up to 800, and that was a couple years ago. We're not at 800. We need to be beyond that, and that's how you're going to handle that problem.
Thank you. Ms. Kerr, what makes your approach unique?
Thank you. I'll go back for a minute to the fact that I look at what is the problem specifically that we're trying to address when you're looking for any solution, right? Because to be proactive, you have to start at the beginning. So much of the time, we're reactive on the back end, and that's never going to work. Right? So is the problem retention? Is it recruitment? It's both in this instance, right? And Mr. Grass was right, the last class was only 11. The current class, I believe, is only 5. We actually only have, I believe, 4 new officer positions in the current budget. And they came to the budget hearing and they said, we didn't put any more officers in because we can't hire anybody. Right? That's terrifying. I mean, if that doesn't terrify you for 4 more years of Pittman, I don't know what else will. right? So we absolutely have to recruit better. We need to give them the moral support, not just the financial support. But I also think there's a couple of other things we need to look at, right? Right now, there's no real, people commit crimes and they don't think about any kind of punishment. There was a state law that I believe Mr. McMillan sponsored a couple of years ago, 2017, that actually allowed more folks. It kind of made release on personal recognizance the default instead of having bail set, right? So we've got this bail reform that's coming in, so people go, they commit crimes, they know they're just gonna be right back out. We've had the 287G program gotten rid of, so folks know I can commit a crime and I'll be right back out on the street. Folks need to know that if they're going to commit crimes in Anne Arundel County, they are going to be prosecuted for it. They're going to be arrested, they're going to be prosecuted. We won't tolerate it, and we're going to support our police. So I am looking at the problem holistically, right? Not just from one angle, not just from a financial aspect. We need that, and we need all these other pieces, right? If we start publishing statistics about the crimes, I think that will also have an impact. You know, if we are looking at all of these pieces together, holistically, that's how we make a big change.
Mr. McMillan, what makes your approach unique?
Well, first, I would just say that Ms. Hare's characterization of what I voted for is incorrect, as are many of the things she's been saying about me at other forums. What I did vote against was the Justice Reinvestment Act that Governor Hogan was for, that reduced criminal penalties on people. It was kind of popular a few years ago. Everybody was doing it, why don't we? But I knew better. Your campaign chairman voted for it, though. It was Governor Hogan's bill. And everyone said, Herb, why are you voting against this bill? And I said, because it's bad policy to reduce penalties on drug kingpins, not pushers, kingpins. So I would say everyone's basically repeated the same thing that I've already said before. But if you ask what's different about me, I'm a proven quantity. I've stood up when people wanted to reduce penalties on criminals and said, no, I'm not going to do that, and here's why. You can count on me to do that. You can take a look at the record and see that I've actually put my money where my mouth is when it comes to this issue. Now, as county executive, the police are going to know that I back them up, just like my men in the Navy and women knew that I backed them up. We're going to have loyalty up and loyalty down. And I think that's going to make a big difference, because right now there is no loyalty down. Proven experience. Everyone else talks about what they're going to do, but you can look at my votes and see what I've done. Thank you.
Mr. John, what would make your approach unique?
You know, about almost 2 years ago, I was involved in a car accident. A young lady pulled out in front of me, right over here on Crane Highway, and she jumps out of the car, she hits me, and she is threatening physical violence against me, telling me that I hit her. I called the police. It took 5 minutes for a 911 operator to actually answer the phone. I got put on hold for 5 minutes. This gentleman that brought this up in the first place waited, say, sir, 30 minutes to get a response from the police. Now, I am very, very pro-police, but that's unacceptable. And it takes for now for our current county executive to realize, oh, we need to fix our 911 system. So glad to see he's finally trying to at least make an attempt there. We are short on police officers. We need to bring more police officers in. We're not getting the recruits. So where are we going to get them from? Okay? There is an organization that I believe would really help our police department to staff its ranks. It's an organization called Army Pays. I work with them in my current job, and their job is to help position retiring and soon to be retiring Army veterans. A lot of these folks are great age to join our police force. I believe we can use that to help recruit for our police officers. The other thing that we need to do, as I said earlier, there is a disconnect between some people in our community and the police officers. There are people that don't trust the police. We need to build that bridge between the police department and those that don't trust the police. Politicians, we don't have those answers. We think we do, but we don't. The police has those answers. The people that don't trust them have the answers. Let's get them together and figure that part out.
Mr. Barra, what makes your response unique?
So the difference between me and everybody else, I am not a politician, nor I care to become one. Okay? I'm here to solve problems. I want to solve the problems. I want to reach out to the community to find out the solutions that apply to you and that you want. If you go to my website, you will see that I lay out what the problems that I see, my solutions. As far as I know, nobody here has the same platform. They tell you they're going to lower taxes, they're going to do this and that, but they don't tell you exactly how they're going to do that. Now, I'm a firm believer of the Constitution. It is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Okay? And I really, truly believe that one of the answers is the Second Amendment, allowing you to exercise the Second Amendment. The news media doesn't let you know that many people in Philadelphia and other states been trying to hijack, and somebody who legally has an arm has defended herself, himself. Okay? We need to hire more people in the police department. Currently, there are only 7 officers in charge of drug interdiction. 7. And drugs are one of the biggest problems we have. We need to allocate more funds to bring more people into the workforce. Hitman allocated $99.7 million for conservation parks, and only $47 million for safety. And most of that, as I said before, is going to go to upgrade the communication system. As a county executive, I will reshuffle all that budget to make sure that we have the police and the support that we need.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we have time for 2 more questions, if my math is right.
Yes,
Don't use
please
Common
keep
Core.
your question brief.
Good evening, Monica Smearman. I'm running for delegate here in District 32. I know that one of the areas that we're discussing about Section 8 housing, which isn't Section 8 housing, is the Dull Apartments along Crane Highway, which is in District 2. Are there other areas that you have concern of, or is there an issue with extending housing situations and medical improvement for people that may be drug addicted or homeless?
All right, we'll start with Mr. McMillan.
I'm not quite sure what you're asking. You're asking if we have what?
I'm asking if there are other areas in our district and in this location.
Yeah. The county, Stuart Pittman, the county bought the Dow Hotel for $3.2 million for transitional housing. Is the property that she's talking about. Like the crowd count up, like
Yes.
I think the matter
The
being
question,
discussed
the biggest
here.
question I have is what's the hesitation in trying to help people that are drug addicted, that are homeless, that have issues in our county system?
I don't
We
think
bought
there's
the
a-
property, we paid for it, we're offering the opportunity. Why do we have the hesitation towards that?
Okay, now I understand your question. Well, here's the hesitation. Because it's in a neighborhood where families
It's in
live.
an industrial area.
Okay, for the sake of our discussion here, I think that the most appropriate way to handle this, and I think that the policy question, right, because that's what we're looking at. This is a county executive, the executive branch. The policy question is, how does your policy impact efforts to address the challenges in our community, and how does that intersect with things like housing? How does it intersect with the resources that we use, public resources?
I'll tell you what,
What is
I'm
your
just going to
stance on
answer the question the best way I see fit. How about that?
That's great.
That's great.
Sorry for the tough question.
Actually, the question wasn't tough. I just didn't understand it, what you were asking, because I am running for county executive. And yes, this happened here. And no, I don't agree with you. I do think that there are people who have an issue with that because they have families nearby. It's not like it's just the building next door. That isn't it at all. Whenever you want to do something, I think it's my turn to speak.
Please allow the county executives to speak, please.
Whenever,
In about 20 minutes, ma'am, in about 20 minutes, ma'am, we are going to have an opportunity.
Industrial area.
I don't mind. I'll just wait till she stops talking and then I'll answer.
It's not a family area.
You asked your question.
I did, but it's not a family area, so I don't want to
Allow me to answer.
Not a family area.
You said you're running for delegate, right? This isn't your political forum tonight. This is my microphone now. You had it a minute ago, and I'd like to be able to answer the question. So if you would please show me the same respect I showed you, I would appreciate it.
Or that it is an industrial and business area, that it is not a family community area.
Sorry, disagree.
There's a school 2 miles down the road. It is a community area.
Now,
Constituents want to know.
the bottom line is this. The bottom line is this. All across Anne Arundel County, whenever a county executive wants to put housing of this type in, he needs to have buy-in from the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
He needs to have some buy-in from the people that's going to impact. That doesn't mean we don't want to help people at all. It doesn't mean that at all. I had this same issue in Annapolis when I was a state delegate. There were sober homes that were springing up, and that's fine. But there have to be some limitations, and the community has to have some protections too. It's a two-way street. Sure, we're going to help people, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be placed into your neighborhood without you having an opportunity to even talk about it or any say-so in it. And I don't think that was done. I don't think it was done properly, and we obviously disagree. Thank you.
Amen.
Mr. Barrett.
Is there anything else to say? So to answer your question, I'm not familiar with the area. However, about 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine, actually a lady, called me because they're trying to put a drug addiction housing right behind her property, right on Woods Road. Okay? And she was very panicking because A, her house is going to go down in price, and B, they're going to have questionable characters running around. Once again, let me tell you, again, you know this, it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. So it's up to you to decide whether or not you want this type of things in your area. Not it's up to me, it's not up to the higher elected officials. It's up to you to vote in or not. Okay? Now, I guess it's weird, right? Let me give everybody else a chance.
Ms. Hare, go ahead.
Thank you. We see a pattern here with the current administration, right? He does things without thinking about them, right? We saw this with the crack pipes in Annapolis, right? He just does it and then goes, oh, that was a bad idea, right? So they bought this without any real public input. And what's crazy is they bought it with COVID money, right? The COVID dollars are supposed to have been spent on, PPE and masks and whatever else they might need it. Nope, they used CARES Act money to purchase this building. It does go on in a number of parts of the county. I have heard about it's hearsay, but I've heard through the grapevine about other properties that they are looking at to do the same type of thing, and they tend to just sneak it right in under the radar. I actually think, Mr. Barra, I spoke to the same woman today, actually, and drove by that property that they're looking at, which was initially approved for 9 single-family homes, but that's not what's getting built now, right? Because it's just getting in under the radar, kind of flipping at the very last minute. Community input is huge. I was actually proud to support a number of bills that I believe Councilwoman Fiedler put in about notice and making sure that notice got to neighbors from farther away. It used to be that you only had to mail neighbors that were, I believe, 175 feet away. Now that distance has been increased up to 300 feet. Councilman Volke was put in a bill that had required recordings, audio or video recordings of certain meetings, public meetings, when someone's going to put in things like this, so that these types of things generated community input. The government needs to hold ourselves accountable to the same standards that we ask the general public to do, right? We need to be a leader in that front. So we absolutely need to have the community input on that side. At the same time, we really need to find a way to support those folks who suffer from addiction and other mental illnesses. I was proud to co-sponsor a resolution that would have expanded access for folks in crisis at the Crownsville Hospital Center. And unfortunately, the county executive did not support that resolution, but I was proud to support that resolution. We do need more access for folks who have that mental health crisis that they're going through.
Mr. Grasso.
I'm still stunned. I can't believe they got $3.2 million for this property. But wow. The interesting part about that is what's happening is that I don't think anybody has a problem helping people, okay? It's when a helping hand becomes a paycheck. That's the problem, okay? And so I put legislation in, and it was called the 1 mile law. And basically what was happening was we were having homeless centers, plasma centers, pot places, TBD or whatever it is, centers, and methadone clinics. They were popping up all over the place in Glen Burnie. It's starting to look like Baltimore City. So I put legislation in that passed, and basically what it was is 1 mile. And it's interesting because if they're going to turn around and we're calling this a homeless center, if it's within 1 mile of one of those other 3 programs I told you about, it's against county law.
Right.
It's just that simple.
Yep.
Okay? And that's what we have because we were actually pushing for, I think, 3 miles. And then one of the delegates said to me, he goes, man, 3 miles is a big diameter. He goes, why don't you just go for 1 mile? And I started looking at it. 1 mile is a long way if you put it in a big circle like this. So if you turn around, if you have a pot house, I call them a pot house, excuse if I'm not saying it right. But if you have a pot house right here, it's got to be 1 mile away from a homeless center or a plasma center, okay? And I'm almost positive that this 3.2 is within that 1 mile, and if it is, they can't move forward with that deal.
Amen.
So that's where that's at.
Mr. John.
You know, my office, I live in the area, so I'm very familiar with the area that you're speaking of. My office literally attaches, if you're familiar with the Anne Arundel County House of Hope, my office is attached to that. I see the homeless every day when I'm at work. A lot of these people, look, they're drug addicts and what have you. But there's a lot of them that really want help. They really want to get things turned around. They want a job. I can't tell you, when I used to smoke, I used to have that bad habit. I would go outside of my office, smoke a cigarette, and people would come in and, oh, are you hiring? A lot of them want to work. The problem is they don't have an address. They don't have an address. You can't get a paycheck. You can't get a paycheck. It's you know, you can't get a place to live without a paycheck, but you can't get a paycheck without a place to live. We need some out-of-the-box thinking here, okay? Look, nobody wants that in their community. I don't, and I don't know that anybody here does either. We need some out-of-the-box thinking because these people need help. They deserve help. We should help them. So one thing that's happened with COVID that may actually be able to help in this particular scenario is a lot of people are now working from home. What happens when people work from home? They don't go to the office anymore. Well, very shortly you're going to find, I'm sure, a lot of office complexes and business communities, they're going to be for rent. Well, why don't we maybe work with a partnership with the state, with investors to try to convert some of those soon to be, if not already, abandoned places. Now let's work on converting them. That way they're not in your community, yet we're still able to help the people that need the help.
Give them all a hand. Thank you. I hope they're brief for audience questions, but
Do one more?
One more.
One more.
Please, appropriate, brief.
Please, brief questions.
Hi, I'm glad that there was some brief discussion about mental health issues. Recently, the Senate introduced a bipartisan legislation and called the Mental Health Excellence in Schools Act. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But if that is something that passes, would you support that, and what would you do on the local level to help? We've had a 50% increase in suicidal attempts in women and young girls between the ages of 12 and 17. We have an epidemic going on in this country, and it's not being addressed. So what, if anything, are you going to do on the local level in the schools or to get the parents involved or educate people on this problem? Thank you.
Start with Mr. Grasso.
This is like a tough question for me. Either way, so the best way that I handle this kind of situation is that I would form a committee, because no man is an island by themselves. And I would form a committee and come up with suggestions on how to do that. And generally when you have problems that you don't know a lot about, and I'm not going to sit up here and tell everybody I know a lot about it, because I don't, okay? You get people together like yourself and have volunteers and say, a committee gets together and says, okay, this is what we need to address, and this is how we're going to get there, and this is what it's going to take money-wise to do that. And that's the process that I would go with anything that I'm not sure about or an expert at. I'm great at a lot of things, but I don't know everything, okay? And so I would count on the assets of the people of Anne Arundel County. Help me. That's what I would say to you. Help me, and let's solve this problem together. That's how I would handle it.
Mr. McMillan.
Thank you. When you said the Senate, was it the state Senate or the United States Senate?
The United States Senate.
So it hasn't passed through yet.
It hasn't passed, but it's a bipartisan bill. It was introduced by Senator Shaheen, Senator Young, Senator Kramer, and Senator Peters. So 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats are involved in that.
And it has funding for us to...
So basically it addresses the shortage of mental health providers in schools by authorizing the Department of Education to partner with higher education institutions to help cover students' costs at relevant graduate programs. The legislation would boost the pipeline of graduate students trained to become school psychologists, counselors, and social workers responding to the youth mental health crisis. That's been worsened by the pandemic.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I knew what we were talking about, so it sounds like the federal government's involved with this.
So if it gets to the local level, will you support it? And what will you do to help current situations going on right now in the schools?
That's fine. I got you. Just wanted to be sure we knew what we were talking about. It's a federal program. Well, first of all, you got to kind of think about how we got here, right? When you close schools for a year and kids don't get to play sports for 2 or 3 years, and there's no outlet for that, and then when they go back, they have to wear masks, and they don't get to go to the prom, yeah, I think they're going to be a little depressed, especially when the chances of a child under the age of 18 dying of COVID is about as likely as one getting hit by lightning, literally. So yeah, there's going to be some depression there, and we are going to have to join hands together and help our kids through this time. There are a lot of kids who are just scared because the media drums everything up. It's always something to be scared of. So yes, it's going to take some time for us to get back to normal, but we need to accelerate that process. Yes, I'm sure if the federal government makes funds available to us, we're going to use them to help our kids to the maximum extent possible. That might involve having more mental health specialists in our schools to help them through this time. It might also involve making sure that the parents can be more involved in the school process than they are right now. So I think it's kind of it's a bigger issue than just the funding. It's a mindset, really. We're coming out of a really bad time that a lot of us didn't want to be into and were forced into against our will. And so are our children. And we're going to need to be there for them. Yes, mental health specialists. But you know what? More importantly, parents and friends. We have to bring everybody together into this. Because it's not just going to be a mental health specialist that might keep a child from preventing suicide. You might prevent your friend's son or daughter because you'll see something they don't. And we all need to be involved in that. Short answer to your question, of course we'll make use of the funds if they give them to us. But we've got a bigger problem than that, and I just think we need the synergy of everybody coming together to deal with it.
Jessica Hare.
So I didn't mention this in my opening remarks, but I am also a court-appointed special advocate for kids in foster care. And I work with various children around the counties who have been removed from their households for abuse and neglect. And I work with them to find a permanent, safe place to live. And I can tell you, as both a mom and a court-appointed special advocate, the last 2 years have been incredibly difficult, and they have been the hardest on our children. Right? Because as parents, we're still focusing every day. I gotta go to work, I gotta pay bills and things like that. And kids had their whole lives turned upside down in an instant, and they have no say in it, right? None whatsoever. I was there at that rally to allow kids to play football, right? We sat there at the council and we listened to folks say, please My child needs to get on the soccer field, the lacrosse field, whatever it might be. This is where they get their self-confidence, right? Their internal motivation. It's their coaches sometimes who might be the first person that recognizes, hey, so-and-so's not okay today. Let me make sure I mention to mom or dad that something's not quite right, right? It's these things. We don't currently have enough school psychologists in our school system. Some of the psychologists have to take on more than one school, right? I will say we have a tremendous mobile crisis team in our county, and I want to give them huge props because the mobile crisis team is incredible, and they do unbelievable work in our schools. But we do need to increase the number of folks that are actually in the schools working on these things. And that goes to kind of a bigger question of taking money away from central office in our education system and putting it in the classrooms, right? Okay, parents need to be involved, and we need to actually have that money in the classrooms. If there can be those psychologists, the resources available for students in the school and not buried at central office, that's how we're gonna get more of that there. But we absolutely, our poor kids were just really attacked the last couple of years. A lot of those laptops that they were given, some of them never even got turned on. I think there was a staggering number of students that never even logged on to a single class, right? I can't even imagine some of the bullying that went on behind the scenes. The average age of opioid overdoses went down, right? So younger and younger kids are overdosing, and a number of child suicides in the county, right? We can never allow that to happen. So that's my time.
Mr. Vera.
Let me answer this question in two parts. Okay? You're absolutely right that we are in a pandemic of mental health. Two of my children came down with a very severe depression. Right? And one of the issues was the fact that they were being bullied online. First part of the first answer, as a citizen, you need to contact any elected official that you have and push them to change the classification for those platforms. Okay? You need to be culpable and responsible and liable for whatever is posted in there. Any bullying that goes in there should be taken down and should be prosecuted. Okay, that's the first part. As a citizen, that's what we should do at the federal level. At the county level, we need to address it just like anybody else said. Trying to understand the problem, how we can solve this problem better, how we can address it, okay? I am very for helping anybody. As a Christian and Catholic, right? Love thy neighbor. Well, as a father, I have to tell you, it is extremely crippling not to be able to help your children when they go through something bad. Or you ask them, how can I help? What's going on? And the answer is nothing, right? We need more people, specialists, professionals that can come and help us with this crisis. Now, aside that point, as a county executive, be sure that I will neither enact or enforce any law that violates the constitutional rights. Okay? There's not going to be mask mandates, there's not going to be vaccinations, none of that. I am willing to stand for you and go all the way to the court to fight for your rights. Thank you.
Mr. John.
Thank you. To answer your question quite directly, and as Herb said, yeah, if those funds are available from the federal government, absolutely they're going to get used. But I'm not going to say that I am overly familiar with that piece of legislation. Those of you that may have had the opportunity to look at my website, ChrisJohn4AACO.com, and you've read through things, you'll see that I have put together a bipartisan committee to help advise me on issues. Part of the couple of members of that committee, one is a teacher here at Glen Burnie High School. One is a PTA president living over in Severn, and her husband actually has kind of pitched in some ideas here and there. He's actually a vice principal in Baltimore County School. And one thing that I've learned is that the mental issues, the mental health issues, and the issues in general are not the same everywhere. The issues in Severn and the issues in Brooklyn Park are all Anne Arundel County problems, but the solutions aren't necessarily going to be the same. So a blanket statement, one answer for everything type of mindset isn't going to work. Okay, Glen Burnie students have a different set of problems than the students in Arnold. The problems aren't the same, so the solutions can't be the same. One of the things we really need to do, and as I was talking to these folks, what I was learning was that programs that are put in place at Glen Burnie High School aren't the same as the programs in Summer Park. We need to get those folks together because politicians, we don't have the answers, folks. The people have the answers. We need to get those principals together and let's bounce ideas off each other to help with the mental health problems that our students are facing. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we give all of our candidate executives? Settings, moderated a number of settings. You all conducted yourselves admirably, with respect, with dignity, and you really restored my faith in our political process just a little bit. So thank you guys for an excellent discussion.
A big round of applause to Corey. He's done a great job. So Robin, the fantastic lady at the bar over there, is going to stick around for a little bit. There she is. Hey, Robin. If you guys want to kind of mingle and hang around, ask more questions. I know there are people who have more questions, and maybe the candidates, if they have a chance to stick around a little bit. Now let me put my AC on also. So, oh, last chance for 50-50. What is it? $1 a piece, 6 for $5. See that man right there? That Victor Henderson guy. Yeah, that Victor Henderson. Thank you, guys.
We will make sure there's pictures for you.